Okay, here's another project by a student, and this one actually has a pretty good starting photograph. As you can see, this one is very highly architectural. Actually, it's a streetscape. Lots of complicated things. Now, I don't want you to get intimidated if you choose something like this. You won't have to draw every little thing. But it has some really interesting shapes in the foreground, some interesting shapes in the background, lots of things in the middle ground, very interesting shapes. So it's a good choice. And as you can see, this is a quick little contour drawing with some texture. It even could be isolating the lines and adding some texture. This beautiful one is isolating the points. And it actually becomes extremely abstract, not even really connected to the original except for the outline. But onto a drawing itself, it's quite beautiful. This one is isolating the lines. So you have some diagonals, some curvilinear, an edge. And I would try to have you make yours a little bit more solid so it's not so scratchy, if you can do that. But it's actually some nice shapes. I might have added some things over here to create a more balanced composition. This is geometric plane. So if you close your right eye and look at this new drawing, it's highly abstract. It does make reference to the original, but it actually is quite beautiful unto itself. Again, geometric plane. This next one is geometric point. So remember, geometric point is really about creating geometric shapes and forms with using that stipple type of dot from your marker. So you have some squares. This one actually is not really that much of a geometric shape here, but the rest of them on this side are. So this side of the drawing probably could have been worked on a little bit more. This is isolating geometric line. And if you notice, again, if you close your right eye, it is a drawing unto itself, and it has some thicks and thins. So that's one thing I haven't talked about yet. You can use the marker, thick and thins within the drawing, and that actually will create some variation, some really interesting change. Okay, this is just planes, isolating the planes. So here you have some plane. Now you can fill in a plane. This is not necessarily texture. If you are going to do it, don't do it just once. It becomes an emphasis point, which actually takes us off the page. So if you are going to do it, maybe you do a large one and then maybe a small one. Maybe he could have added one up in here. But perhaps he didn't label them, but I'm going to guess that this one is geometric plane. And then I'm going to correct myself and say, perhaps this is plain. He didn't label them. It's a little hard. I need you to label them with a pencil behind your drawings. Now for this one, he chose texture. Not a lot of texture. Again, this beautiful kind of flipping between foreground, background. I would have added a little piece of texture down in here. This is an asymmetrically balanced composition, but it's slightly off because we need something down here. There's too much negative space, creating too much weight. But it is an interesting way to see the composition. This is his mixture. So he's got some points, some planes, some lines, texture. Again, something right here might have been helpful to create an emphasis point, but it actually is starting to be kind of interesting. And again, this is his original drawing. Now, I don't believe he put them in consecutive order. I can't be sure because he didn't label them. But again, if you look at things, that's kind of beautiful onto itself. So when you start to layer your book, put things on top of one another just to see what it will look like as I or you go through and see what kind of interesting, I would say, layering of techniques would be happening. And again, you want to staple them and put a piece of tape. Part 2 for this project, you're wondering what drawing inspired him. So maybe it was this one, because you see some little windows kind of being investigated here, and it still does look like houses and buildings. I'm going to guess maybe this one, but I'm going to guess it probably was the first one. These are much more geometric. So we're going to go with this first one. Definitely this first one. And then you have the three-dimensional paper drawing, right? So you have this, which is being cut out in these tiny little windows that he was investigating in the doors. Same with this one. And lastly, this big one, which is quite nice. I'll move this down so you can see this, right? So the really kind of interesting turret, some windows that were popping out. So it's really a nice piece. So when you start thinking about your paper sculpture, you want to think about the whole piece of paper and where on the paper do you want to draw and then cut things out. Obviously, you want to do different scaled items. Don't make everything the same size. Some of these are small, some of these are middle size, and some of his are very large. So that's a really nice diversity. You want everything attached to the paper, and you want to try to look at the whole paper to see the composition is balanced. Lastly, when you're ready to photograph your work to upload it to the Google Drive, make sure you pay attention to the shadows. They can be absolutely beautiful and enrich your paper sculpture's final presentation.